Can we please get a big round of applause for Mr. Alan Welsh?
Thank you, John. Hello, hello. I'll be talking about free will. So this is the second time I've been here. From what I can tell, a lot of people give talks about roughly within the realm of ethics. They try to give something upbeat. Perhaps they're talking about something that's wrong with society, and I think the motivation is that they want to make the world a better place. But I think my talk and the following two talks, as John said, are metaphysical. So I just want to try to give you a description of the way I think the world might be. And whatever normative conclusions you draw, you draw. I'm not here to tell you how I think you should live your life. So, what is free will? Let's start there. What do you think free will is? Anybody have any ideas? Yeah, right? Free choice. I agree. I think the intuitive understanding is that free will means we have a free choice, that we can do what we want. But we should unpack this. And in the literature of free will within philosophy and the sciences, the idea of what free will is, let me see this. The idea of what free will is that we seem to have control over our actions. We seem to be the authors of ourselves, right? That our actions are up to us. But not only do we have control over our actions, but for whatever action we perform, we could have done otherwise, right? So I decided to come here tonight and give a talk on free will. And you decided to come and listen to some people give talks about various philosophical topics. And you think that you did not have to do that. You could have done something else, right? You could have stayed home. You could have had a drink with some friends. You could have had some pizza. So writers on this topic refer to this as alternative possibilities that you could have done otherwise. Okay? So these seem to be the two factors that are involved in our concept of free will. Again, that we have control over what we do, and also that we could have done otherwise. All right? So there are some threats to this conception of free will that we have, at least our intuitive conception of free will. What are the threats? Well, they're in the sciences, in neuroscience and in social psychology, a great many people believe that free will is an illusion. So I don't want you to believe that I'm here talking about something that is just some philosophical mumbo jumbo. I will give you some metaphysical arguments, okay? Because this is the Philosophy Forum, so we will talk about philosophy. So first threat comes from what is known as determinism, and I will get to that in a second. The second threat comes from indeterminism, which is just not determinism. And the third is known prosaically as the basic argument. Okay? The basic argument is independent of whether the world is deterministic or not. So what do I mean by that? What is determinism? The definition of determinism can be put thusly. The laws of physics, together with a given state of affairs, determine a unique result. So a good metaphor for this is a movie reel. I love Daniel Day-Lewis. I love Daniel Day-Lewis. So I will talk about the movie Gangs of New York. Right? It's a good movie. Okay, so imagine you're watching that movie, as I'm sure many of you have, which I can tell from your response. And there's a scene in the movie where Daniel Day-Lewis is sitting in a chair. Leonardo DiCaprio is lying in a bed, and Daniel Day-Lewis is telling him a story about his past, and he has the American flag draped over himself. It's beautiful. I don't mean I'm a nationalist. I'm just saying the scene is beautiful, all right? So there's a moment in the scene where Daniel Day-Lewis talks about cutting a man's eye out of his skull. And let's imagine that that happens on frame number 200. So what determinism is it's just like as if the world were a movie reel. If you were watching that movie and you decided to rewind it to frame 199 and press play, then what will happen next is the very same scene. Daniel Day-Lewis will talk about cutting out a man's eye from his skull. No matter how many times you rewind the film to frame 199 and you press play, frame 200 will have the same content every single time. That's just what determinism is, okay? Now, I'm not saying the world is like this. Scientists and philosophers do not know if the world is like this. We may never know. But if the world is like this, then it is as I just described it. So, I went ahead a bit too quickly. So if there's only one future result possible, then clearly we do not have alternative possibilities, right? So if determinism were true, our sense of free will, our concept of free will is flawed, okay? We cannot have the free will that we think we have. We could not have done otherwise if the world is deterministic. So that is a threat to our free will. Not only does it threaten us because we could not have done otherwise, but neither do we have control over our actions. And this has been put well by a philosopher, Peter von Inwagen, who he says, if determinism is true, again, if, then our acts are the consequences of the laws of nature and events in the remote past. But it is not up to us what went on before we were born. And neither is it up to us what the laws of nature are. Therefore, the consequences of these things are not up to us. Okay? Going back to the movie, Gangs of New York, you're watching it. You go to frame 199. That's a certain state of affairs in the movie. It obeys its own laws of physics, the laws of the movie projector. You press play. The very same result will happen, okay? It is not up to you what will happen after you press play. The movie will play the very same slide every single time. So if determinism is true, that's a big threat to our sense of free will. So you might say, well, what if determinism is not true? Maybe you have some familiarity with what I'm talking about and you think about quantum mechanics. The advent of quantum mechanics in the 20th century. Under the standard interpretation of quantum mechanics, the world is not deterministic at a quantum level. There are other interpretations of quantum mechanics that are deterministic. But let's suppose the world is not deterministic at the quantum level. The hope is that micro indeterminacies will give rise to macro indeterminacies, and we will thus be free of the shackles of determinism. That is, indeterminacies at the quantum level will give rise to indeterminacies in our brain, and somehow, nobody's very clear about this, but somehow the indeterminacies in our brain free us from the problem I have just posed here of determinism, right? It seems that according to quantum mechanics, there are waves of probability. And whatever happens to happen, no pun intended, happens by chance. Okay? It happens by chance. It didn't have to happen. Something else could have happened, according to the standard interpretation of quantum mechanics. So that seems to buy us alternative possibilities. Other things could have happened. However, if we purchase alternative possibilities, we lose control. Why? Because if an action is undetermined, then it is a matter of luck or chance, as a physicist would put it. If an action is a matter of luck or chance, then it is not free. Because by definition, we do not have control over chance. We don't have control over chance, do we? So we might say, okay, we might find hope in quantum mechanics and say, Alan, look, the world is not deterministic. And even though there's no evidence that micro indeterminacies emerge to macro indeterminacies, there's hope for that among some people. But all that would entail is that certain events happen by chance. And we do not have control over chance. So we might have alternative possibilities, but we still don't have control. Now, You might not find any of this seemly. You might find it unwholesome. Or you might find it too abstract and you say, what the hell are you talking about, man? So I want to circumvent now talk of determinism or indeterminism, and I want to give you a third argument that also threatens our sense of free will. Okay? This is known as the basic argument, and it goes like this. You do what you do because of the way you are. So, to be responsible for what you do, you must be responsible for the way you are. But we cannot be responsible for the way we are, since this has been determined by A, heredity, B, environment, C, random factors, and D, our past actions. These four factors exhaustively determine who we are at any point of time. Clearly, we do not have control, we do not have responsibility over our heredity, or our environment, or by random factors. So you might say, but Alan, we have responsibility for our past actions. But that just leads us on an infinite regress. To be responsible for our past actions, we must have been responsible for the way we were at that time. And then we're faced with the same problem. To be responsible for the way we were at that time, we must be responsible for one of these things. And again, the only one that seems available to us is our further past actions. And you just go on and on and on until the time you were born. As far as I know, there has never been a response to any of the arguments I've given you tonight. So, this is a vivid image. I got it because of Nietzsche. Nietzsche talks about, he derides what is known as a libertarian conception of free will. It's our intuitive understanding of free will. And he puts it quite eloquently by way of talking about a character named Baron Munchausen. I don't know if any of you have seen the film, but he likens it to Baron Munchausen pulling himself up. The belief in free will is as if you believe you can pull yourself up out of a swamp by pulling on your own hair. So I have about a minute left, and I know a lot of people want to give positive talks here, but unfortunately, I only care about the truth, and I think if you want the world to be a better place, you have to embrace the truth. I think we need to challenge our intuitions about things. I think the history of science has shown us that our intuitions have been wrong so many times. Our intuitions about space and time were shown to be wrong by Einstein. Our intuitions about how we see things have been shown to be wrong by vision science. And if we want to be responsible citizens and we want to make wise choices, I think we have to respect the truth no matter how unwholesome it seems to be. So that's why I came here to challenge our sense of free will. What else? Yeah.
Do you think it's, given all this, and I agree with determinism, do you think it's possible to live a life day to day knowing that you don't make choices? Do you think people can live without this understanding?
Thanks. Yeah, that's what I was just going to say and I forgot. So, as I said...
I got you.
Yeah, as I said, there are a great many scientists and philosophers who already accept this, that free will is an illusion, and I accept it. But none of us are going around doing horrible things and acting as if none of us act any different. I don't know if you know who Sam Harris is. He's a well-known intellectual who has a good podcast. He believes free will is an illusion. He puts this much more eloquently than I can. But people talk about this a lot, and I don't know a single scholar who believes that free will is an illusion that has changed their way of life for the worse. And if anything, it changes you for the better. I mean, I'll give you one example. So in terms of hatred, I don't hate anybody. I can't hate anybody because I don't think anybody has responsibility for what they do. And so all that results is compassion. And many people would agree. So I don't want you to think that this is a pessimistic view of anything. All right, John.
Sorry, I was snapping to agree with you.
All right. Yeah, so Yeah, it's not so pessimistic, guys. There are many people who think that free will is an illusion for many considerations. In addition to what I've given you tonight, there are there's insurmountable, in my opinion, scientific evidence for this. I just don't have time to go into that. Yeah.
I doubt I've spent as much time thinking through this in complex detail as you have, but it seems to me that with determinism and indeterminism, those are two absolute, pretty extreme ends of the spectrum where either everything is completely absolutely determined and there's no influences or there's no ability to change the direction of anything, or everything is absolutely entirely chance and you have no influence on anything that happens. I mean, I don't know, it just seems to me that both of those are kind of saying things are all the way on this end or all the way on that end, and not discussing any maybe there's a mix of determination and chance both going on, or
well that is actually what people generally think. That at the macro level everything happens deterministically. Physicists are just saying that at the quantum level it's indeterministic. The hope is that those indeterminacies will rise to a macro level. I think I went by that too fast. But what you're saying is that there's a mix. Some events happen deterministically and some might happen indeterministically. But this is what is already widely believed to be the case.
Gravitation and quantum mechanics, we understand gravitation to be very much deterministic.
Right.
That's called soft determinism. There's hard determinism, and soft is the middle. There's a word for it. It's called soft determinism.
But regardless, if whatever processes are deterministic and whatever processes are not deterministic, in order to salvage our sense of free will and the sense of alternative possibilities, the indeterminacy would have to happen in our brains at the moment of choice. That's what it seems to be the case. And like I said, if we have that indeterminacy, we might have alternative possibilities, but we do not have control over chance.
I'm so sorry to have to wrap things up here, but can we please get a round of applause for Mr. Alan Welsh? Thank you so much. Thank you so much.